Going back to one of our earlier stories now, Eskom has released its delayed financial results. We're going to cross to Diabo Seto, who is there now. Diabo, good afternoon. Tell us what's happening.
Good afternoon, Zinga. Well, the long-awaited financial results of Eskom have been released today, effectively a day before the actual deadline that the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Remember that we did a report on this extensively about the impact that it would have had they not been able to release the results. And as expected, of course, the power utility did not release the best of results. The net profit down, the EBITDA margin very, very significantly down from around 30 billion this time last year to around 9 billion rand. Of course, the power utility is facing very, very big challenges. And we remember that last week, this has been nipped in the bud by the Deputy President. He appointed a new CEO. He appointed a new board led by Mr. Jabu Mabuza. Mr. Mabuza was also here today, giving the country assurance that the board will do everything in its power to make sure that it turns around the power utility. And what I really did like is that the acknowledgement of the challenges that do exist in the power utility, and that everything that has been reported in the media is actually true, and they are working to make sure that the power utility is turned around. Mr. Phakamani Hadebe is the acting CEO at Eskom. He takes over from Mr. Sean Maritz, who I suppose is not the CEO anymore. And perhaps we should find out from him what his plans are of turning around the power utility that has been so embattled and has so many problems. Mr. Hadebe, thank you very much for making time to speak to us. Where do you start? This is a mammoth task that you've just gotten yourself into. Where do you start assuring the employees of Eskom? Where do you start assuring the country and the consumers of your product that all is perhaps well in Eskom, and that you will work hard to make sure that everything comes up? The set of results that you've announced here were not the greatest.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. But we have already started. You see, we've been at Eskom for 1 week. But in that week, we have already dealt with corruption or corporate governance issues. There are 5 people that are out of the system. But over and above that, we've been able to negotiate and speak to the financial institutions, the funders, and we've been able to raise the 20 billion rands. And over and above that again, we've had discussions with the auditors, and what was qualified audit is an emphasis of matter, which means we are not qualified. That's a big move, to know that this has happened just over a week or so. So as we move forward, we will need then to put a strategy and a plan that will ensure that our cost and revenue meet somewhere, they reach a kind of equilibrium. We are aware that our cost is very high. We are aware that our revenue is not supposed to be where it should be. But we're going to work with a team that's been there at the bank for some time to kind of come up with a strategy to move this forward. We are also aware that the capital structure needs to be reviewed. If you are looking at the gearing, we're sitting at the gearing as of today of 72%. We need to bring that down. That can be brought down through debt, conversion of debt to equity, and increasing the profits.
Let me quickly ask you about the issue of corruption, which has been one that has gearing its head upright when it comes to most state-owned enterprises, and all of us using Eskom as a big example. How do you nip that in the bud? We know that Mr. Machela Koko, who's an employee of Eskom, has now taken the power utility to the labor court. What is your strategy with dealing with employees who are not quite ready to leave the power utility, and how do you deal with the issue of corruption within the power utility?
It's about culture. It's about bringing in the right people who prioritize the importance of corporate governance, because you can have the best of the corporate policies, you can have the best control systems, but if you have the wrong people, that doesn't bring the necessary results. So we're going to go out there and get the right people. But we're also going to go and talk to 47,000 staff members of Eskom and highlight that they've played a bigger role and they've done well under trying times. And that is, right now we are fairly new, and we have to look at the cost and the revenue side. Then we'll make a call. Every business works exactly like that. We also have to look, as I've already indicated, on the capital adequacy ratio of the institution. So there are a number of things that we are going to do. What we have done up until now was to concentrate on liquidity, that is the funding, and also to deal with the issues of corporate governance, because the market was saying, should you want us to to consider funding you need to deal with these issues.
So far, do you think you've satisfied your investors and also rating agencies who just last week Friday downgraded you?
I understand why we're downgraded, in as much as liquidity has improved in the past week or so, but they were reviewing the period under review. So that is as at September 2017. Yeah. So at that time, the liquidity issue was a challenge. So in as much as within a week, the situation is much better, we're beginning to see investors negotiating, talking to us. And in fact, if you are looking at the trading of the Eskom paper, it has improved because more investors are buying it. But that is not good enough for the period under review. But going forward, we hope, and we're going to work very hard to ensure come end of the year, this March, we have a clean audit report.
I hope that will be accompanied by what the chairman mentioned about making sure that corruption charges are opened and people are taken to book.
We will do that. We have agreed as a board that ours doesn't end up by investigating and terminating. But if there are reasons and we're strong on the case, that will be reported to the police.
Mr. Phakamani Hadebe, thank you very much for making time to speak to us. We really appreciate it. That was Mr. Phakamani Hadebe. He is the acting group CEO at Eskom, and he was giving us a lowdown on how his team plans to stabilize the power utility. We've spoken about the issue of corruption, we've spoken about the liquidity issue, we've spoken also about the fact that Eskom was downgraded by ratings agencies just last week Friday. But of course, it's always, everyone says that the proof, or the pudding is in the eating. We'll have to see 6 months from now on what this board has been able to do. We already know that they needed the 20 billion rands to make sure that they fund their operating cost, and he has assured us that they've already secured that, although nothing is signed on paper yet, but they've already secured that. So that we'll only have to wait and see what comes out of the power utility. And that's it from Megawatt Park.
Yeah, we'll see to coming to us live there from the Eskom briefing that's just wrapped up. And it's also a wrap from the News at 1 team. Thanks so much for joining us. We're back tomorrow. Goodbye.